The story of the 1982 Roosevelt Dime begins with the broader history of the Roosevelt Dime series, which was first introduced in 1946 as a tribute to President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who had passed away in 1945. Roosevelt had led the nation through both the Great Depression and World War II, and he was also closely associated with the March of Dimes, a nationwide campaign dedicated to fighting polio, a disease Roosevelt himself battled for much of his life. The design, by John R. Sinek, featured the left-facing portrait of Roosevelt on the obverse and a torch flanked by an olive branch and an oak branch, symbolizing liberty, peace, and strength on the reverse. By 1982, the Roosevelt Dime had already been in circulation for more than 3 decades, and the United States Mint had transitioned from silver coinage to clad coinage beginning in 1965 due to rising silver prices. This meant the 1982 dime was made of a copper-nickel blend rather than 90% silver and 10% copper. The coin contained an outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core, one of the most durable combinations for modern U.S. circulating coinage. The year 1982 was a transitional and economically challenging period in American history. The United States was emerging from a period of high inflation that had dominated the late 1970s and entering a recession early in the decade. As a result, the Mint had to balance coin production with economic realities, which sometimes led to lower mintages or adjustments in production processes. Although the 1982 dime is not considered rare in the traditional sense, its story remains tied to the broader economic environment and minting changes of the early 1980s. In 1982, the Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint both produced Roosevelt dimes. However, one of the most notable aspects of this period is that the Philadelphia Mint had generally used a P mint mark since 1980, except on cents. In 1982, the Roosevelt dime from Philadelphia proudly carried the P mint mark, which for collectors was an important detail since no Philadelphia mint mark had appeared on circulating U.S. coins before 1980. The Denver Mint struck its dimes with the familiar D mint mark. Both mints produced large quantities, ensuring enough coins for commerce across the country. The design elements of the 1982 dime remained consistent with previous years. The obverse retained the detailed portrait of Franklin Roosevelt with the inscriptions, "Liberty in God." We trust the date and the mint mark placed just above the date. The reverse featured the classic torch, olive branch, and oak branch symbolizing victory, unity, and freedom, and included the inscriptions, "United States of America, E pluribus unum, and one dime." The 1982 dime continued the tradition of clear symbolism emphasizing national unity and the resilience of the American spirit. During 1982, the Mint worked on improving the quality of strikes across all denominations, including the dime collectors. Sometimes note that coins from the early 1980s can show softer details due to worn dies or high-speed production, but well-struck examples exist and demonstrate the excellent craftsmanship the Mint aimed to maintain. Although the 1982 dime does not include major design changes, it still represents a period of refinement in clad coin production technology. In the realm of collecting, the 1982 Roosevelt dime holds a unique place. While it is not known for major errors like the famous 1982 no-P dime, which actually belongs to a different year but comes from the same transitional era, collectors still pay attention to potential varieties and strike differences from the early 1980s. The presence of the P mint mark on Philadelphia strikes is a reminder of the historically important moment when Philadelphia coins first began consistently carrying mint marks, which helps make 1982 an interesting study year in modern numismatics. Another notable aspect is that 1982 dimes were produced during a time when the Mint was focusing on cost efficiency, which sometimes influenced coin production speeds and die longevity. This means some coins from 1982 may show minor die cracks, machine doubling, or slight planche imperfections that collectors enjoy identifying, although none of these varieties reach the level of high-value rarities. They do, however, offer opportunities for hobbyists to explore the details of coin minting and the small imperfections that result from mass production. The 1982 Roosevelt Dime also reflects the changes in American currency use during this period. Debit cards and electronic payment systems were still in their infancy, meaning small denomination coins, including dimes, were widely needed for everyday transactions. Vending machines, public transportation, and payphones, which were extremely common at the time. This high everyday usage ensured that millions of 1982 dimes circulated heavily, with many becoming worn over time, making high-grade survivors more appealing to collectors. For investors in modern coinage, the 1982 dime is a representative of the beginning of a shift toward long-term clad coin preservation. Coins from the 1980s are reaching ages at which untouched high-grade examples become more interesting to grading services and collectors, especially those who specialize in modern coin series. Collectors often look for mint state examples which maintain their original luster and detail, and some very high-grade 1982 dimes can achieve strong interest in registry set competitions. The story of the 1982 Roosevelt Dime also highlights the continued legacy of President Franklin Roosevelt in American culture. Even decades after his presidency, and passing the dime continues to honor his leadership, social initiatives, and influence on American history. The March of Dimes connection also remained culturally relevant. Throughout the 1980s, as medical advances continued to reduce the effects of polio and other childhood diseases, demonstrating how the coin represents not only monetary value, but also a tribute to humanitarian progress. Within numismatic circles, the 1982 dime is often studied as part of the broader evolution of the Roosevelt Dime series. Collectors examine differences in strike quality, mint mark placement, die characteristics, and mintage figures, comparing them to earlier and later years. Understanding the 1982 dime helps collectors grasp the mint's transition from earlier minting methods into more modern approaches used in the late 20th century. When examining mintage, the 1982 dime was produced in sufficiently large numbers, with the Philadelphia Mint striking hundreds of millions, and the Denver Mint also striking vast quantities, ensuring ample supply. Despite high mintages, the survival of very high-grade pieces remains lower, due to heavy circulation and the fact that few people saved rolls of dimes during the 1980s because they were not considered collectible at the time. This makes high-grade examples more interesting for today's collectors. The year 1982 also marked a continued shift in public interest from silver coinage to modern clad coins. Collectors who once focused solely on older silver coins began to recognize the importance of assembling complete modern sets, creating a new appreciation for coins like the 1982 dime. As more collectors began exploring modern U.S. coinage, the Roosevelt series gained renewed attention, and this interest continues today, especially among those building complete sets from 1946 to the present. Another aspect worth noting is the impact of inflation on coin purchasing power during the early 1980s. The dime, which once could buy a small snack or a newspaper, now had comparatively less buying power and yet remained an essential coin in circulation. This change in economic conditions influenced how people viewed coins like the 1982 dime, shifting them from daily essentials to more symbolic pieces in the eyes of collectors as decades passed. By looking at the 1982 dime with historical context, we see a coin that represents American resilience, innovation, and transition. It stands at a moment when the mint was refining its clad coinage technology, when mint marks had recently become a standard part of Philadelphia coinage, and when the U.S. economy was experiencing significant changes. The coin itself carries the legacy of Franklin Roosevelt, a president who reshaped the nation during some of its most challenging periods. The 1982 Roosevelt dime remains an accessible yet historically rich coin that offers collectors and historians insights into U.S. minting history, economic change, and technological development in coin production. Whether found in circulation, tucked away in a jar, or preserved in a collection, the 1982 dime reflects its era and continues to contribute to the ongoing story of the Roosevelt Dime series.